Hello. Welcome back. Today's a bit of a big one. Um, we got Fairy Tale by Stephen King. I've been intimidated to read Stephen King's books because it's 598 pages. It is. I've read bigger books than this, but it's intimidating because it's a horror book. Um, and and so Stephen King intimidates me. He's a pantser, which is crazy to me. Which, if you don't know what a pantser is, it's someone who has an idea for a story. They don't do any previous like prep or world building or character building or anything. They just sit down and write. I could never. I could never ever do that. But this is so it's very intimidating. I have a goal this year to read 10 books I wouldn't usually read. And this is one of them. And I picked it up and I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna do it. And I know a lot of people start with it. I watched the movies. And so that's the only thing Stephen King that I've like indulged in ever. So we'll see how this goes. We'll see how I feel throughout the video as the days pass. My opinions on this book, as this is one of the more controversial Stephen King books that I've heard. So we'll see. Horror isn't usually my genre. I've read a few horror books last year, but they were more like fantasy horror or like straightforward, um, straightforward horror. This one's a little different. Let me blurb it up for you. Let me read to you what's on the back. Charlie Reed looks like a regular high school kid, great at baseball and football, a decent student, but he carries a heavy load. His mom was killed in a hit and run accident when he was 7, and grief drove his dad to drink. Charlie learned how to take care of himself and his dad. When Charlie is 17, he meets a dog named Radar and her aging master. Howard Bowditch, a recluse in a big house at the top of a big hill with a locked shed in the backyard. Sometimes strange sounds emerge from that shed. Starts doing jobs for Mr. Bowditch and loses his heart to Radar. Then, when Bowditch dies, he leaves Charlie a cassette tape telling a story no one would believe. What Bowditch knows and has kept a secret all his long life is that inside the shed is a portal to another world. So I picked it up and I read the back and I was like, you know what, this is interesting. This is not typical horror as I feel per the title, and it's it just sparked something in me. I usually wouldn't read Stephen King. I don't really watch horror movies. I don't really indulge in horror in general, um, as a genre because it just doesn't appeal as much to me. Like the only horror movies that I've ever watched are like horror movies that I've ever watched are It and The Purge. I've watched a lot of movies that could be like considered thrillers, like The Batman or um, other movies. um, like what else? Hold on. What else have I watched that could be considered a thriller? I'm actually curious. Now let me load. I've watched El Camino, Coraline, Five Nights at Freddy's, Sicario. I really liked Sicario. I thought that it was really good. Um, I also really like Breaking Bad, so it was very similar. It was kind of a cartel story. I won't go on about it, but very similar to other things that I've watched movie wise. But yeah, I've never really indulged into Stephen King, so I figured this would be a good start, and then I thought that I would video document this, because I feel like reading a Stephen King book for the first time is a monumental moment. So why don't we get into to some Goodreads reviews? It is overall a 4-star overall out of over base almost 300,000 rating and 33,000 reviews. So let's get into it. Let's see. Barry rated it 1 star and said, "Steve, babes, what's this?" So that's great. What else? What else we got? What else we got? I'm trying to find ones that don't contain spoilers. There's so many that contain spoilers, and hmm, hmm. I'm also trying to find really, really short ones. Joanne rated it 3 stars. I'm assuming she's British because she uses the word slog. This was a slog, to be honest, 2.5 to 3 stars. Don't know what the word slog means. I'm assuming that she's a British woman. Uh, Deborah, hey Deborah. Deborah rated it 4 stars. This is a long, very, very long review. Holy shnikes. She said a fairy tale the Stephen King way, and then she like summarized it basically. Thank you, Deborah. I'm not reading all that though. See, oh my god, all these are so long. Can we normalize short reviews, please? Tim. Hey Tim. Tim rated it 5 stars. If Stephen King were a musician, he'd be a maestro. The master story creator is always on point. 9 out of 10 stars. 9 out of 10. He give it a 5. That's not an option. Tudor. Hey. Rated it 4 stars. And she said 4 stars. Thank you, Tudor. Yeah, so I'm gonna start with the Goodreads reviews. But so very, very, very mixed reviews. Very controversial. Very long reviews that I will not spend my time reading, to be honest. Because I get to save my reading power for this 600-page book. So I haven't really been reading super long books this year. So we're gonna see how my attention spans. We're gonna see if I am a victim to brain rot. Is really, this is a brain rot experiment is what this is. So yeah, I'm gonna. That was weird how I just held that. I'm gonna read a little bit of this, and I'm going to. My goal is to annotate the fuck out of this, and yeah, I will be back, and I will see you when I see you. Adios. Hello, and welcome to my dark and scary room. Totally because I thought this would fit the vibe of the book, and totally not because I have put off recording. Oopsies. The book. This is the most I have ever annotated a book ever. So it's very, very interesting. I am a total of I'm 8% in at a total of like 50 pages. Yeah. And I'm 8% of the way into the book. And it's really weird. Because there's a lot, so where I'm at, and you might say, well, 50 pages in like a day is like it's not that much for the fact that this is a 600-page book, and I know, but it's been mostly plot build up. I've gotten nothing. Okay, I've all that I've read is a big nothing pile, a big nothing pot. As much as I've annotated, um, it's been a big stew of nothing. Although what I do like is at the beginning of every chapter there's an illustration. I think it's really cool, and I annotated this part because one of the opening lines is my problem, and I'm sure many writers have it, not just newbies like me, is deciding where to start, and that is a. And I thought that was funny. I thought that was really funny, Stephen King. Very, very funny joke. I like that. I like that he opened with a joke, and it made me feel like, oh, this is gonna be a good book because he opened with a funny little joke, and it's gonna be great. I don't know. I don't know. I have very mixed feelings. Again, I'm only 50 pages in. Yeah, 50 pages left. Yes, this is the 50 pages that I have left. Um, but it starts with the buildup of his mother, the main character Charlie. It's his mother's death, which starts it all. He starts he starts with his mom's death. Um, she went to go get chicken for dinner, and then she got ran over very violently. Yeah, most of her body stayed on the bridge, so it started off very violent. Um, yeah, they made it very clear that she was a ginger. Um, Stephen King, I've seen likes alliteration. You know, he opens with the little Rumple River, and he also uses as drunk as a skunk is in here too. So, um, and and there's some words in here that I'm like, this is a very big word. I had to Google what blotto means, which means very drunk. If you didn't know, vocabulary word of the day: blotto, blotto, blotto. It means very drunk. And then it just keeps going into where like his dad became an alcoholic after his mom died, but then um he kind of and then it seems like he's recovering after. Um, there's some weird. There's some weird things going on. Um, he meant yeah. Um, there's some weird wordings in here. He talks. Let me see what my next thing is before I go into that. I'll kind of go get into that later. There's some weird word choices that are used, and I'm not sure if I like them very much at all. Actually, um, he's a big user of italics, which same here, same here. I love using italics. Sue me, sue me for liking the using of italics. Oh yes, the next thing is we get introduced to Mr. Bowditch. We get introduced to him through the story of Charlie's friend Andy, who who he like met. The talk about like how at one point when he was younger in like middle school, elementary school, he was riding his bike past Mr. Bowditch's house, and his golden retriever um, was like barking her head off at him, and um, just absolutely was going haywire and like almost killed him. Said monster dog like Cujo in that movie is what was used to describe her. So and then Charlie then after hearing that story, I forget exactly how it was brought up. Um but one day Charlie decided to stop at Mr. Bowditch's house and heard his dog Radar barking and heard Mr. Bowditch calling for help. So that's how they meet. Is is that way because Radar was howling for help of some sorts because Mr. Bowditch fell and broke his leg very gruesomely. And they also mentioned that Mr. Bowditch used to be a ginger. So I don't know, like Stephen King has got like a lot of like ginger fans. Like he's a very ginger positive man, as so I've seen in this book. Stephen King loves the gingers. This just in, Stephen King loves gingers. Um, so Yeah, Mr. Bowditch broke his leg like very badly, and he had to go to the hospital. But he obviously couldn't bring Radar, but Radar still needed to eat, so he ended up letting um, Charlie go and stay and feed Radar and come back and take care of her. And he was very adamant about telling Charlie not to snoop in his house. When he said don't snoop, when he went in to call as when Charlie wanted to call the ambulance to call 911, and after he agreed to let him stay and take care of Radar. And then we have some sweet moments with his dad, which was nice. Um, and then Mr. got weird about Mr. Bowditch's pantry, saying that it was all set for the apocalypse. So I don't know if that'll be something that's going to be important for later. But Mr. Bowditch had a lot of a canned goods and dry goods like lining his pantry. And then him and his dad have dinner, and then he goes back to go check on Radar. And oh yes, this is an important conversation between Charlie and his dad. Charlie's dad calls him a hoarder, and then um, Charlie says the kitchen, at least a place for everything and everything in its place. There was some dust on the old medicine bottles in the little bathroom, but I didn't see anywhere else. And then we talk about how he doesn't have a car. And Charlie says, nope, and not room for one in his tool shed. So, again, bringing up the shed. I know the shed is a very important part of the story. But, yeah, Charlie plays the guitar. That was a cool mention. Guitar mention. Um, and and then eventually he decides to go back and check on Radar, and his dad said, "Don't let Norman Bates get to you." He said, "People were calling it the Psycho House long before you and your friends were born." So this has been Mr. Bowditch has been known as a little town creep esque, not like town creep, but like a man in the town that lives in a creepy ass house, kind of deal. So, and then so he goes back to the house. Uh, I'm just going to read this. It'll be easier for me to explain if I read it. The gate bolt was easier to pull, at least. I used my phone's flashlight to walk around the house. I ran my flash over the side of it once, and I wish I hadn't. The windows were all dusty, all the shades were pulled, and the windows looked like blind eyes that were somehow seeing me, not liking my intrusion. I rounded the corner, and as I started towards the back porch, there was a thump. It startled me, and I dropped my phone. As it fell, I saw a moving shadow. And it said the thump must have been the dog door swinging shut. So eventually, kind of got a thing, and he went back and was whatever, just playing with Radar. But here's the point where I'm gonna talk about that weird thing that I thought. Stephen King is a thing for talking about balls, and it's really weird, and I don't like it. This is 2 times on one page he talks about balls, and it's really weird, and I don't like it, and I don't know what the fuck is up with that. I don't know if this is a very common thing within Stephen King, but I don't like it. And it's really and you know, I am a girl. I am woman. Yes. If that wasn't clear. So, you know, maybe it's less of a big deal for like guys. I know whatever. Stephen King's obviously Stephen King's dude, but you know, maybe it's a more nonchalant thing for guys that I'm just not in the loop about. Um because quite frankly, I don't care. But um yeah, it's really weird. It's really weird to me. So I hope that like dies down in the for the rest of the book, and I hope I don't have to read the word the phrase, but I felt my balls crawl again. I did not enjoy reading that. Gonna gonna be real with that one. Gonna be real with you on that one. But anyways, he plays with Radar. He goes into Mr. Bowditch's living room and sees the TV with the antenna, old timey TV, and eventually leaves. And then as he's walking back home, as I walk back home, I thought about the gutters, no doubt plugged with leaves, the unmowed lawn, and the place badly needed a paint job. And that was beyond me. But I could do something about those dirty windows, not to mention the sagging picket fence. If I had time, that was, and given the upcoming baseball season, I didn't. Plus, there was Radar. This was love at first sight for her as well as for me, maybe. If the idea strikes you as weird or corny or both, all I can say is deal with it. As I said to my father, she was a nice dog. So basically, he's thinking about like obviously helping out around the house, and it talks about in the blurb that like you know Mr. Bowditch ends up hiring him or like having him help out with stuff, whatever, eventually. But like basically just wanting to help him. But the next chapter, we're on chapter 3, a hospital visit. Quitters never win. The shed is what it's titled. So he goes to go feed Radar in the morning, and then he goes to the hospital to visit Mr. Bowditch. Um, and whatever. They're talking about how he's a hero, whatever for calling 911. And he said it was a dog. I heard the dog howling, and it said, and then the woman said, "Did the dog call 911?" Real. I thought that there's more like weird phrasing. Um, I'll just read the whole quote so there's context. But if you want to see him, you better go on down. I just gave him a shot for pain, and I'll probably put him under before long. Broken leg and hip aside, he's severely underweight. Easy pickings for osteoporosis. You might get 15 minutes before he's off to see the wizard. So I thought this is again very very unique kind of writing style. Again, I've never read a Stephen King book before, so he's always been uh weird. But let's see with this. I didn't annotate anything on this page. I just put a thing. Oh, this is just more of their interaction, him and Mr. Bowditch's interaction at the hospital. Um, and they officially became acquainted. But and then he asked someone about Mr. Bowditch's TV because he didn't know what it was. Dummy. Well, he knew what it was a TV. He just was asking about the antenna on top and what exactly it was. Um, another I wrote another weird analogy. Coach Harkness was on me that afternoon practice like white on rice, or more accurately, like flies on shit. So again, I literally just wrote another weird analogy. So there was There was, yeah, a bunch of weird analogies. But this then leads in. He was at baseball practice, and then he quit. He quit baseball because he was sick and tired of the coach being kind of an asshole. So, and then he became happy about it, and then he went to Mr. Bowditch's house and got the mail, and then um he let Radar out, and then they were playing together, whatever, outside. Um, oh, she followed me outside, and when I went to collect the fallen ladder, I carried it down to the shed and saw the heavy duty padlock on the door, and just propped it under the eave. While I was doing it, Radar started to growl. She was crouched down 20 feet in front of the padlocked doors, ears back and muzzle wrinkled. From behind the door came a scratching, followed by a weird chittering noise that stood up the hair on the back of my neck. And then he decided to try to, like, break down the door, which got to no avail. So again, got some weird noises coming from the shed and some weird activity. And then and that's about it. Another and kind of plot point that I think will probably prove important later on in the story is he keeps on talking about that he made a deal with God, in the sense that was I going to tell my father that I made a deal with God, in the sense that I think it was after his mom died. I think while his dad was drunk, he had prayed to God. And let me actually see if I can find it. Mm. And I never forget the deal I made with God. If you do that for me, I'll do something for you. You just show me what you want and I'll do it. I swear. So that's been, there's reoccurring religious kind of stuff going on, as well as reoccurring things that I don't want to read very much. But so far this book, I've enjoyed reading it so far. It Obviously I'm only 50 pages in. It doesn't really read like a horror book because I mean nothing in the sense of horror has really happened yet. So I feel like this can swing either way. This could either be really good or really bad. And I'm honestly not sure which one it's gonna be. So, but that's the first 50 pages. It's I'm pretty sure this will probably be the longest clip that you'll watch because it's just all of the world building. So I'll uh I'll have to see what happens next, and I'm a little scared. I'm a little nervous to see what happens next. And this is the most I've ever annotated a book ever. So you are welcome. Yeah, I'll see you. I'll see you in a bit. Hello, welcome to day 4. Um, I think it's technically day 3. I am currently 155 pages in and 25% into the book. I have annotated the fuck out of this, which I read that means I read 155 pages from the last time that you saw me, and like nothing happened. Yeah, the main plot point finally happened on page 146. Yeah. I'm not very very happy at the moment. I'm not liking it very much. So let's get into some of the things that happened. So, Mr. Mr. Bowditch, Howard, he went back home after being in the hospital, and then turns out that he's like a secret gajillionaire and has like a bunch of gold in a fucking safe. And he started then paying Charlie for taking care of him $500 a week. Insane. But so that's the biggest thing. Again, this deal with God keeps on being brought up. It's there's a lot of filler, and there's a lot of like information that like I have like highlighted and stuff, but it's not really that important for me to go over and cover it and stuff. But again, more he like dances around the topic of the shed and stuff. And then Charlie gets he's in a bunch of newspapers with Radar for saving Mr. Bowditch. And yeah, I mean there's some really like kind of weird stuff in here that like that I don't want to cover, that I'm not really a big fan of. I don't know if I like Stephen King's writing very much. This book did come out in 2022. It is definitely one of his more controversial books, so glad I chose this one to read. But it turns out that he eventually found out that Mr. Bowditch had prostate cancer, along with his broken leg, and he was doing physical therapy and stuff. He was taking a med called Lynparza, which slows the growth of tumors, which was for prostate cancer that Charlie ended up figuring out. And then there's weird stuff in here that I wouldn't want to read ever again, and that I won't read for you. It's weird. I feel there's a lot of unnecessary stuff in here. I feel like this book, and I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about it at the end, but as of right now, how I'm feeling is that this book probably could be split in like the page numbers could be split in half, and it would be just as good, if not of a better book. I'm going to be totally honest. I've not had a great time reading this so far. But then by the end of it, by towards the end, the shed. We finally get action from the shed. Radar was barking at the shed because it was like making noises from it, and then Mr. Bowditch, it was like there was like thudding and stuff, and Mr. Bowditch goes to investigate it. It's described as a weird mewling sound, sort of like a cat, but in a higher pitch. And so another thud, more scratching. I had a hand over my mouth as if to stifle a cry. I don't remember putting it there. And then Mr. Bowditch goes out there and tells Charlie to get inside. He says, nothing to worry about. That door will hold, but I need to take care of this. And then he said, son of a bitch, move the boards and blocks, must be a big one. So weird stuff with the shed. And then he brings his gun out and he goes in the shed. And here, he turned the key, opened the door, pointing a gun at a slightly downward angle. I expected something or someone to come bursting out at him, but that didn't happen. I did see movement, something black and thin, and then it was gone. Nothing happened for a long, long time that actually couldn't have been more than 5 seconds. Then there were 2 gunshots. And then I opened the kitchen door, and just as I stepped out into the back porch, the door of the shed opened. Mr. Bowditch came out. And then he avoids talking about the shed, and then he says, I'll tell you, but not today. Don't go in there. You may in time, but for now, don't even think about it. And then Mr. Bowditch, then the next day, calls Charlie and says, I believe I'm having a heart attack, Charlie. Actually, I have no doubt. And then he says, under the bed, everything else you need is also under the bed. Do you understand that? Under the bed. Take care of Radar, and when you know everything, decide. When you know everything, decide what you want to do about her. And then he hung up the phone, and then Charlie called 911, but he died on the way to the hospital. And he then left literally everything to Charlie. And then the last thing that I read was this. The first thing I noticed was that the gate was open. I thought I shut it, but I couldn't remember for sure. I went around the house, started up the back steps, and stopped on the second one. The kitchen door was open, and I knew I closed that one. Closed and locked it. I went the rest of the way up, and I saw I'd locked it all right. Splinters were sticking out of the lock plate, which had been partly torn from the jamb. I didn't consider that whoever had been broken in might still be there. For the second time that day, I was too stunned to consider very much. The only thing I remember thinking was being glad I left Radar at our house. She was too old and fragile for more excitement. So that's the last thing that I read. So finally, on page 146, after 146 rules, or 146 pages, ignoring the 30-page rule, the main plot point of Mr. Bowditch dying finally happened. And then someone broke into now of what is Charlie's house. And that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. I am gonna have to come. Well, I have to come back because obviously you're gonna need more updates from me. I really want to DNF this. I'm gonna be so honest. I really do want to DNF it, but I also want to reach my goal of reading 10 books that I wouldn't usually read this year, as well as I need a YouTube video for the week. So, and I've gotten to a point where like I'm almost 200 pages in and I'm interested in what happens next. I wanted to read 200 pages before I want to get to through like 2 more chapters before I came back and gave an update, but I thought at this point it would be a good time to give an update. So, I don't know when you're going to see me next. I know it's not going to be tomorrow cuz I got a lot going on tomorrow, but you'll probably see me. It's Monday. You'll probably see me Wednesday. I don't know how much I'm gonna be able to read between now and when you next see me on Wednesday, but we'll see. Yeah, I want to be done with this on. I I get to be done with this on Thursday because the video has to come out on Friday. So yeah, It's 1:00 right now on Monday. So my goal is hopefully to be around like page 400 or 500. Hopefully closer to 500 when the next time you see me. Yeah, I don't know how far I'm going to be able to get into this because I'm having a really hard time reading it because there's just been a lot of filler, and it has not been an enjoyable experience. I wanted to be farther than this by this point, because I'm not used to the last like 600-page book I read was King of Scars, Rule of Wolves, Those are both like over 600 pages. And I read those like months ago. So I'm not really used to reading really big books within a week anymore. But it's a nice challenge. I get to challenge myself, and yeah, well, you'll see me when you see me, and and I will update you on how I feel at that point in time. I'm not gonna DNF it. That my goal is to not DNF it because I really want to get through to the end of it because I like promised myself I would when I bought this. Um, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to. So we'll see. You'll see me when you see me next. And like for me, it'll be a couple days. For you, it'll be in like 2 seconds. So yeah, see you later. Hello, hello, and welcome again to dark, uh, the dark corner. I feel like I took acid and read this book. I just realized looking at the genre of it, it's not actually a horror book, it's a fantasy. I thought this entire time it was a horror book. I am 49% of the way through. I am 297 pages in, which is basically 300. I'm 300 pages in. So we've made a dent. I've continued to annotate the ever living fuck out of this. It is the most I've annotated a book ever at all. I had the two little things at the top too. Um, yeah, I feel like I smoked a bowl and then like took a trip. Is what reading this is. It feels like I don't even like want to look in the book. I'm gonna try my best to summarize what happened, and you're just gonna have to take my word for it. It is insane. So he leaves. So the Mr. Bowditch dies, and he leaves Charlie a tape that he plays. And in the tape, he tells him to go in. He goes into the shed, and he finds the mysterious world. Um, and also in that shed is a giant ass cockroach that he had killed. Apparently, in this world, there's this tunnels. You go down this giant spiral staircase. It's actually on the cover of the book. It's the whole point. That's the whole point of the book. This is the staircase that's in the well? It goes to a different dimension, and there's a whole town down there. But in order to get to that town, you have to like go through like these like caves that have like bats and these giant ass cockroaches in them, which is great. And then they die when they're exposed to the air of like our world. Um, it's really weird, and I don't know what to think about it. But he goes down into this world after listening to the rest of Mr. Bowditch's tape because Mr. Bowditch turned out to actually be like 120 something because he took this like he was on like the wheel, this like wheel thing in the center, and like he gained more life or some shit. And again, I feel like I took acid. This is real. I feel like I smoked a bowl and I fucking made this shit up. It's really weird. Um, so he goes down into this world and he follows Mr. Bowditch's initials. And which I'm sure there's like details that I left out that are important, like Mr. Bowditch is actually Adrian Bowditch, and he came back as like he actually bought the land, and he came back as his son, whatever. I don't fucking know, whatever. But um, eventually Charlie ends up going down to this world, and he meets Dora. I love Dora. Dora is my favorite character. I fucking love Dora. She's a sweetheart. She lives in a shoe. Again, with the name Fairy Tale, all of these people are like living. It's basically like a fairy tale land. All of them have a curse of some sort. Um, So it's emulating a lot of different fairy tales. And so he meets Dora, and then he meets another girl that he ends up like falling in love with, who used to be a princess, but then some like war happened, and then now she's not a princess, and now like she doesn't have a mouth, or like she does have a mouth, but it's like covered with like film, and then she like cuts it open or some shit to like eat at one point. It's really weird. Her name is, oh, I swear it starts with like an L. What the fart? Where is it? Leah. Her name is Leah, and he ends up falling in love with her. But then like it doesn't go into a lot of detail about that. But then so after he meets Leah, Leah actually talks through a horse. She like telepathically tells the horse what to say. The horse talks. It's kind of crazy. Again, very peep peep the title. It's said multiple times. I highlighted every single time it's said, and I write. He said the thing right next to it. Oh, what also happened? Oh yeah. After he met Dora the first time, I'm like rewinding. After he met Dora the first time, he went back up, and then he went to see Dora, and then Leah, and then he ended up meeting Claudia. But after he came back up, there's there was a guy that was like trying to kill him when he came back up. That was the guy that originally broken into the house. The like haha guy. I wrote a frowny face next to haha because I wrote it was pissing me off. I wrote PMO next to it because it was pissing me off. Oh, and I wrote bless up next to at this point, like when he said he was gonna stop writing the ha-has. And at the top of the page, I wrote this guy pisses me off. So it was a really annoying to read, but then he ended up stopping. Thank you, Stephen King. Thank you for that one. Um, but and yeah, where I'm at, he met Claudia, and then he stayed the night at her house, and now he's with Radar, and Charlie is trying to go and get into the center of the city to get Radar on this wheel so that she can live longer. So Charlie's not trying to use it for himself; he's trying to use it for Radar, and he left while his dad was while his dad's in the middle of a retreat, and he told everyone that he was going to Chicago because this is set in Elgin, Illinois, near Elgin, Illinois. I don't know. It's like some like weird. It starts with an S, but it's near Elgin, whatever. But he said he was going to Chicago to there's a person there's a person that in Chicago that said that he could like cure Radar. So but in actuality he's in this world. So where I'm at is he is leaving Claudia. He's about to leave Claudia and go and do the thing and try to get Radar on the wheel. So I still have so much of this book left. I don't know when you're gonna see me. I know I told you yesterday that you're not gonna see me tomorrow. I lied. You are seeing me today. So I think you might see me tomorrow, but you'll probably won't see me until Thursday. So I'll see you then, and hopefully this gets better. I totally thought that this was a horror book. It is not. um, it is a fantasy book, but there is horror elements in it. I totally thought it was a horror book. It sounds like a horror book. I don't know. I'm gonna stop talking, and you will see me again in a few seconds. Okay, bye. I finished the book. I did it. It's currently Thursday. I gave up annotating it. So I'm just going to give you a summary from what happened in my mind. And yeah, so basically where we left off, he had just left Claudia. Claudia, my queen. I love her. Her curse is that she's deaf, so like she's like her dialogue is in all caps. So like you can always tell it's her, but like I love Claudia. Claudia and Dora are my queens. I love them. Um but basically after Charlie left Claudia, he got radar to the sundial and reversed her age, and now she's young, she healthy, she good as hell. Um, and then what happened after that is Charlie got captured by like the night guards, and he was in prison for a while, and they had like prison fights and shit. It was really boring. And, and then he got out, and they had like a prison like store like whatever like the classic like oh we're all gonna escape together type thing that happened. I'm pretty sure that's what that was. It was really hard to pay attention. um but especially when there was like things where like there's a couple of like pieces of dialogue that I got pissed off when I read them, so like I just like completely crossed them out because I got so angry that they were even like in the book. I don't even know where it is. But oh yeah, I just like completely crossed it out because I was pissed off that line of dialogue was even in the book. Um, but it was, and then it's okay. So I'll continue summarizing. So after that, they got out, and then eventually, and then they figured out that Charlie was actually like the lost prince. He was apparently like a lost prince of the land or some shit like that. I don't know. He was actually a prince of the land apparently. And then they defeated the Gog Magog. Hold on, the I am the Gabgo Gabgalab. Pause. I found the page. I found the page. I found the page. I found the page. Yes, Gog Magog. They defeated the Gog Magog. And then Charlie eventually went back. He was gone for like 4 months when because this he went down in like he went down in November of 2023 and he came back in February of 2014 or 2013. He went down in November of 2013. He came back in February 2014 is when this is done. And then so he brought his dad down. He explained everything to his dad eventually. But he was like missing and stuff for 2 months because he had gotten captured in the prison and stuff. And so he showed his dad, but then he never returned. And then him and his dad sealed like the well off with like steel and concrete and shit. And then Charlie ended up becoming a professor at a liberal arts school in Chicago. And that's the end. Yeah, that's it. That's the end. That's all that this was, which is why I'm so pissed off. He was like, because there was the girl Leah he was with. It was the girl he was in love with her. He wanted to stay with her, but then she said, "No, I'm too old for you." But they still kissed. It was weird. It was weird. I felt like I smoked the bowl when I read this. This book, could have been halved, and it probably would have been way better and way like I would have. It felt like a chore finishing this book. I don't know if other like I'm not saying don't read it. For me, this was I'll give it a 2 star. 2 stars. I'll give it 2 stars because like some of the writing was great, and I think that it was a good idea. And I'll give it 2 stars, one for Dora, and one for Claudia. because I love them so much. Like the characters are great. The characters are great. The writing, I don't know. But the characters are great. The character development is great. I'm not so sure about like some of the plot with it. I feel like it was very stereotypical. Um so I know that this I don't think I probably should have googled this before, but I don't know if Stephen King, hold on. If he has multiple, he does have multiple fantasy books. So this is not his first fantasy book. Um but yeah. Um it was interesting. I say pick it up if you want to. Obviously, I picked it up because I'm like, oh, it's Stephen King. I thought it was a horror book. That was my fault. I thought I was reading one of his horror books. So I think I will. Ooh, ASMR. The annotation tabs. I don't know if that's gonna sound like shit in post. I don't know, but pick it up if you want to. I I didn't like it. You might like it. I don't know if I really like his writing style. I might. I think I'm gonna try one of his horror books. So you might see me back with another Stephen King book. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of his writing. I don't know. But I was talking to someone and they said his novellas were really great because they're a lot shorter. So you might see me back with a horror book or a novella. Um, if I re- it'll probably be The Shining or It that you will see me back here with. Um, but yeah, that's it. I give it 2 stars. I give it 2 stars. Um, Not my most favorite book that I've read, but that's part of the thing where like I'm picking up 10 books that I usually wouldn't pick up this year, and this is one of them. I would have never picked it up. Although the cover is, can we take a moment and appreciate this cover? This cover is fucking beautiful, and I love it. I love the cover so much. But and like this, look at that. It's so pretty. It's so freaking pretty. So I might do a video where it's like I pick up books based off of their cover, the prettiness of their cover. So I might do that at some point. But yeah, like I love the cover of it, and I was like, oh, it's Stephen King. The cover's really pretty. I basically judged it by its cover. Is what it ultimately was. But yeah, you might see me back here with another Stephen King book at some point this year, because then that would be knocking off another book that I wouldn't usually read, is if I read another Stephen King book. So, but that's my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. Pick up and read the book if you want. Not my favorite book that I've ever read. It's also not terrible. It's not like the worst piece of media that I've ever read ever at all, because I've read so many. I've read things that are like a million times worse than this. But and Stephen King's a millionaire for a reason. Okay, I'm not a millionaire. Okay, I don't have movies made about my books. Okay, my book isn't even out yet. Shameless plug. Read my book when it comes out. But yep, Stephen King's Fairy Tale. This has been me reading it, and my review and my opinion. So if you liked it, please subscribe, like the video, and I'll be back next week reading another book. But other than that, if you want updates on my book, you can go ahead and follow my Instagram, which is my name, Adelina Zach Author. It's also linked in the description. And yeah, I will see you next time. Bye.